So when Joy and Joanne asked me to do this session, of course I said yes, because a long time ago, being a fairly risk-tolerant person, I decided as an adult that my default when people were talking to me was going to be yes. And so that's my default answer, and then after I give the answer of yes, that's when I go into panic mode and say, what the heck did I just commit myself to? So with this, when they called me several weeks ago, my default was yes, and I'm very happy to be here. So I want to talk to you guys about resiliency. Let's see. Which I also call the art of being Mr. Fantastic. Now, who here knows who Mr. Fantastic is? Please, Liam. Nerd. It's almost like you're a plant. So anyway, yes. Mr. Fantastic has the ability to stretch himself into all kinds of shapes. But the other thing, the piece that a lot of people don't mention when talking about Mr. Fantastic is what makes him so fantastic is not that he can just make himself into a parasail or a ball or stretch into a bridge, but his ability, once he's done that, is to resume his normal shape. He goes back to being intact. And so that's really what I want to focus on with you guys today is a lot of us are very good at stretching ourselves too thin, at making more out of little, at going the extra mile, but where so many of us seem to have difficulty is that ability to go back into our intact shape. And so that's what I want to focus on today. So resiliency, just so we all are speaking from a common language, is the ability for something to go back into its, for something to resume a different shape and then go back into its normal shape, which is also called elasticity. And for human beings, it's facing adversity and then being able to quickly resume your normal shape, which is also called toughness. So I brought, again, I had to bring some props because, again, we're in a room full of interpreters, right? So normally, this is us. You know, you change shape, you go from one side to another, but it's pretty easy to get back to that normal, intact shape. And then we have other things that kind of come along at us, be it travel ceilings, Centennial, a kid in every park. You know, I mean, all of this stuff comes at us. Maybe a tragedy or adversity in your park, the illness or death of an employee. All of these things knock us off center. So how do we get back to center? That's resiliency. I couldn't just talk about resiliency, even though Joanne and Joy had asked me to talk about resiliency. I can't talk about resiliency in a vacuum because for me, resiliency has two kindred spirits, and those are sustainability and adaptability. Resiliency by itself is hard to maintain. Resiliency has to be sustainable. Resiliency has to be done with adaptability. You can't always have the same response to changing situations. You have to be able to adapt and then come back to center. You have to be able to sustain a posture of resiliency. Some things work for a while, but they're just not sustainable. Going on vacation is a great way to recharge and restore and to come back renewed and resilient. But it's not sustainable, despite the fact that we want it to be. You have to come home. Right? Sometimes our response is to put on our battle gear when we're faced with adversity. You suit up, you get with your staff, you arm yourselves up, and you go into battle, and you take on that adversity. But again, that strategy isn't always going to work. Sometimes you stand and fight, and sometimes you learn how to do an orderly retreat. All of that provide you with some sort of sense of resiliency. So I'm going to tell you guys, I wasn't going to do this because, I'm shy. But I trust the folks in this room, so I'm going to tell you a little story about something that happened just this week, just in this building, just 2 days ago, that caused me to have to rally the forces of resiliency, do something that I thought was going to be sustainable for me, and also caused me to engage in some adaptation. So on Wednesday, we all took our tours, and we went to various places, and then we all came back together again, and were broken into groups. And we had 5 different places to go to. And my group was sent down to the bottom level of the building, and it turned out there were way too many of us for the room. And so we decided to regroup on one of the terraces. And so we rode up in the elevator, and we got off, and we started walking toward the terraces, and then I got a message from my park, and it was a phone call I absolutely had to take. And so there was a docent standing there, and I watched my group walk past the docent, and they had their cups of coffee and their sodas and their water bottles and their open containers and their juices and whatnot. And they went in, and nothing was said, and I'm on the phone, and I get off the phone, and I have my sealed can of club soda. And I get ready to go onto the terrace, and the docent stops me. And she looks at my hair. And she said, "Oh, you can't bring liquids into the museum." And I kind of knew what was going on, and I can't stand this when this happens. It just drives me nuts. But I think what she was trying to say is, well, we all know what she was trying to say. And so as I watched my white colleagues file past her with their open containers and juices and drinks, and I had to be stopped because apparently I was someone who needed to be told we don't have drinks in museums. But I wasn't going into the museum, nor were my colleagues going into the museum. And I got angry. I felt very talked down to. It was very condescending, the way she spoke to me. And I showed her that my drink was closed, just like a 3-year-old would say, "Look, Mommy, see, I'm okay." And so I showed her that my drink container was closed and that I was not going to destroy the exhibits and artifacts that were on display here in the museum. But I walked into the room, and I'm supposed to be an adult learner, and I was not in a very good adult learning place. So I got through the session, had a good session, and then we came back in here, and I couldn't stay with you guys. You know, it wasn't sustainable for me. I wasn't in a good place to hear anymore, because I was dealing with some racism at that point, and I just kind of needed to take myself out and pull myself together. And so I was here, all kind of floobery, and so I went outside, and I took a walk, and I walked down Market Street toward is it Frontage? And then I took a right, and I started coming back up Chestnut Street. And as I took each step, and I got with the rhythm of the city, and I saw the faces around me, and they were brown, and they were white, and they were black, and they were all kinds of color. And they were on bicycles, and they were walking, and they were in cars, and they were smiling, and they were frowning, and they were talking to themselves. And I became part of the rhythm of the city. And I started feeling like a human being again. I didn't feel apart. I didn't feel other. And I started becoming intact, resuming my normal shape. And so I went from this, ooh, to this, just becoming right. And then I turned the corner, coming back up Chestnut Street, heading back north, and I think that's north. Is that north? You're heading north when you're going up Chestnut toward the 30th Street Station West? So I'm going up. The numbers are going up. And I ran into this woman, Cynthia, and Cynthia works in the regional office. And I don't know her exact job. She's sort of an administrative person. And when I was on detail in the Northeast region this past winter, I worked with Cynthia, and she had her head down, and she was probably mumbling to herself, and she didn't see me, and I was going to let her go past, but then I stretched my arms out wide, and I started running in front of her back and forth so she couldn't pass, and so she looked up at me, and she saw crazy, and she's like, "What the heck?" And I'm like, and I didn't say her name because I wanted her to know that I knew who she was, but I didn't want to say her name. And then I saw the recognition, and then she smiled. And she laughed and she hugged and she said, "I miss your smile." And so I went from feeling like someone who was being condescended to and looked down on and felt like a child and didn't know what was going on just because, well, maybe my hair is a little bit different or I don't understand how to be in a museum, to someone who was loved and appreciated and part of the rhythm of life. And then I got back, I was intact. I was fully intact at that point, and I was able to rejoin you and listen and be a part of this and be a part of this group because I had persevered through that, and I used some of my old tried and true tactics. I love to walk. I love to take walks. I love the pound of my feet as I'm walking down the street. I love walking my dogs. I have a corgi and I have a skipper key, and they are dogs with no tails. And so all you see is this fluffy butt in front of you. And I'm walking behind them and I see those little fluffy butts and they're doing their thing. And I feel calm and I feel at peace, and I do some of my best thinking when I'm walking my dogs. So that's one of my very sustainable methods of staying resilient. You know, and sometimes I have to adapt. Sometimes it's raining or snowing and we can't go for a walk, so I have to find something else to do. And so I adapt in order to remain resilient. And so I want to share with you guys some of my, let's see, what do I call them? Resiliency affirmations. Be a willow, not an oak. Joy, you've heard me say this to you many times when we were in Washington, D.C. The slings and arrows of outrageous fortune come upon us, the hurricanes come, the winds blow, and the willow is just like, whoa, wow, you know? And then all of that stops and the willow returns to right. It remains intact. It resumes its normal shape, because this is not its normal shape. This is its normal shape, and it resumes its normal shape. Meanwhile, the mighty oak, depending on the season, depending on whether it's gotten enough water, depending on whether or not the roots are deep, the mighty oak, when the winds are howling and times are bad, sometimes the mighty oak goes down and it doesn't get back up again. Sometimes it's good to be an oak, and we've all been oaks, and you fight for your people and you fight for your resources and you fight for what's right, and you're an oak, and that's good and it's right, and that's a good posture to adopt. But sometimes it's really, really just good to be a willow and just let it rush over you. And that's a way of remaining resilient. Live to fight another day. This is my main blade in my Swiss Army knife. Live to fight another day. Choose your battles wisely. Sometimes it really is just a good idea to let the bad things go past you, to fold your tent up, to go resume a posture of restoration, and come back out to live to fight another day. It's okay. It's called an orderly retreat, and it's a proven battle strategy. The problem is, it's not sustainable, guys. So while I would applaud anyone who lives to fight another day, you have to remember it's like vacation. It's not sustainable. It's not sustainable. So be sure you use this one wisely. You've got people watching you. Participate in your own rescue. For those who I work with at Boston National Historical Park and Boston African American National Historic Site, we had a superintendent, and this was his mantra, and it's one that I assumed. Participate in your own rescue. Don't wait for someone else to come along and swoop you up and put you on that white horse and take you to safety. The other piece of this that I did not put down here, but I want to share with you is, normally the answers are within. Normally you kind of know what you should be doing next. It might be hard. You might not quite know exactly how to do it, but normally the answers that you seek are already inside of you. And so you are already prepared to participate in your own rescue. And then the other gift that we got this week from Mike Caldwell was the ability to take risk and fail. And that's a blessing. I mean, so now I get to go home and I have a whole new bunch of resiliency affirmations that I get to write down, because now I also have permission to try and to fail. And that's a sea change, guys. That's a sea change. And so I've got a lot of thinning to do when I get home because it's going to change a lot of things for me. So I will be better able to participate in my own rescue because I now also have the ability to fail and still be supported by my senior leadership. Get out of the weeds. For those of you who are chiefs of interpretation or who supervise people, this is a super important one. So I used to work with Joy for 10 years in the Washington office. We were both program people. We got into the weeds of the weeds with our programs. I spent many a day sitting down with solicitors arguing over may versus should and shan't versus won't when it comes to policy. It doesn't get any weedier than that, and I love it. I love being in the weeds. I love being deep, deep in the weeds, and then I became a deputy superintendent. You can't be in the weeds when you're a deputy superintendent. Part of getting out of the weeds. Otherwise, you can't see the forest for the bark. This is this is an adage I came to. So I had a manager. She was great. She is great. Very organized, smart, lots of field experience, fun to be around, very detail-oriented, and she was my boss. And we were working on a project together, and she got deep, deep into the weeds. And I looked at her and I said, my God, you can't see the forest for the bark, much less the trees. And after we had a little conversation about insubordination, we had a larger conversation, and what I was able to share with her was, you're my boss. You're my leader. You're the one who's supposed to set the path for us to be on, and you're up on the bark, and so how do you have any perspective? You can't see. I need you up there. I need you to tell me where we're going. I need you to tell me what the obstacles are ahead. Set the path for me. Set the path for us. Get out of the bark. And it ended up being a very productive conversation. And I have to tell myself the same thing with my own staff. Sometimes I get right down in the weeds with them. And every time I do that, I lose perspective. I can't be their eyes and ears. I can't set the pace. I can't set the tone. I'm too busy looking at bark, and I'm blind. And that keeps me from being resilient, and it keeps my staff from being able to resume a resilient posture because we don't know what's ahead because I've got my nose slammed up against a piece of bark. So stay out of the weeds. Get out of the trees and definitely get up off that bark. So I came up with this one yesterday when I was putting these slides together, and I totally cracked myself up. I was on the 3rd floor of the regional office, and I was hooting and hollering like I'd lost my mind. Find your spark. So that's going to be it for me. That's it. Find your spark. And so I've just added that one, and I think it's clever as all get out. And I actually have decided it's trademarked, and you can't use it without my permission. So take that, National Park Service. So I think that's all I have because I just kind of needed something to keep me centered when I was talking to you guys about resiliency. And so I would like to ask, do you have a resiliency affirmation? Is there something that you say to yourself when you're out there and things are all bloopy and, you know, your eyes are bugging out of your head and, you know, you're getting off center? What do you do? What do you say to take you back to right? Elisa. Very good. Resiliency, adaptability, sustainability. Tried and true methods. Yes. That's great. Or my mom liked half the things you worry about never come to pass, which I thought was a good one. Yes. Is that yours, or is that someone that you... Oh, that's a wonderful one. No one got dead. I love that. I love that. Take risk. Yes. Oh, I like that one. There you go. And then the other one I've used is when I play Uno with my nephews. It's the diabolical mustache. You know, that's another good one.
This is a problem time and money will solve. Say that again. This is a problem time and money will solve. Insinuating that the problems that time and money can't solve, those are the real problems.
That was deep.
Like you, I'm a walker. I always think I've never met a problem so big I can't walk away from it.
A good orderly retreat.
I mean walk. Just walk and think and get peaceful.
We need a couple of these. To the tune of No Woman, No Pride, everything will be all right.
I am the sea and you are the shore.
Ooh, I like that.
Does that need to?
No, I am the sea and you are the shore.
Yeah.
It's very tranquil.
Not my monkey, not my circus.
Not my monkey, not my circus. That was very good. Resiliency affirmations.
My mother was a single mother of 7 because my father passed away when I was very little. And the worst disaster, middle of the Nevada desert, 6 kids, 7 kids in the car, she'd just look and go, it's a learning experience.
That's a resilient woman.
We charge one windmill at a time.
We charge one.
Windmill at a time.
Oh, very good, Don Quixote. That's classic.
Sorry.
Just smile because you're alive. I like to look at a historic building or something that is much older than me and think, if that can survive, then I can.
Oh, that's very good. And sometimes, and again, it's not sustainable. I mean, we do get into survivor mode, right, where you just feel you're hunkered in the bunker. And again, that's good and it's right. It's just not sustainable. You know, it's a good adaptation versus fleeing or fighting. You just hunker down, but you have to, again, just keep all three in mind to adapt, find postures that are resilient, but also sustainable. We can assume any position for a while. I can keep this ball squeezed and crushed for a while, but then it changes quickly back to its intact shape. And so that's what I need to do, is change quickly to my intact shape. And so when I had this incident here with the museum, it took a little while. It didn't happen in an hour. It didn't happen in a couple of hours. But again, I got blessed with a miracle by running into Cynthia. What was the chances in the city of however many hundred thousands of people that I would run into someone that I actually knew who would say something to me like, I really miss you. I missed your smile. And I mean, that was just, it just jerked me back to center. Like almost like a slap in the face or someone throwing some cold water on me. And it was very refreshing. And so I was able to return to you guys so quickly, refreshed and restored and rejuvenated, and I got that incident out of my mind, and I became an adult learner, and it felt good, and it felt right. And so do I have one more adage, one more resiliency affirmation to take us out? Yes. Put on your own oxygen mask first. Absolutely outstanding. And I think that's something that we learned when we were starting with some of the webcasts and so forth, and I thought that was a very good image for us to have with us.
We have 2 over here.
Ah, yes.
I have one of them. It's a Roseism. She said this just the other day, and that is, oh, you have a headache? Be blessed you have a head.
Oh, yeah.
That's one of her more basic ones.
I did do that. Sometimes it's hard being a really good friend of mine. because just for no good reason. I mean, my dear friend had a headache. I mean, she's one of the organizers of this event. She's hauling water. I mean, she's like a Sherpa. She's answering questions. She's got 2 or 3 phones blazing. And we went outside for some restoration and resiliency, and she's like, oh man, I have a headache. And I did. I looked at my dear friend. I'm like, you got a head. Shut up, you know. And not only that, you've got nerve endings connected to your head so you can feel pain. Be blessed. Put a wig on that and be blessed. And what it is we needed to laugh at that moment. Yeah, you know, you got a headache, good. You got a head, so let's roll. And is that sustainable to maintain a friendship? Absolutely not. You cannot say to your friend, but so many times, shut up and be happy you have a head. So I have to be adaptive. Sometimes I have to pull out the Kleenex, and sometimes I have to pull out a hammer, and that's what friendship's all about. It's funny as heck, isn't it? Laughter. Affirmation, resiliency, sustainability.
Hello? Yeah, there we go. I like The Bug's Life, the movie The Bug's Life with Heinrich the caterpillar. Some days this will all be over and I will be a beautiful butterfly.
All right, well, I will share like one last tip. So I happen to work in a park when I'm the deputy superintendent, and one of the other things that I have the joy and pleasure of being able to do with some sort of silent and tacit permission from my superintendent is for a couple of hours every day I bring my dogs to work. And so I have decided that they are emotional support animals, and I got them little jackets. And so and that's how I get away with that. And so we're pretending that I need emotional support animals for right now, and that's how we're getting through this. But it's the little things that we do to get us through this life that keep us resilient, that keep us laughing, that keep us smiling, that keep us getting back to intact, to our right selves. And the idea is to be able to do it as quickly as you possibly can. So you have my phone number. Feel free to call me. Sometimes I'm going to tell you, you got a head, you know, so really put a wig on that and be blessed. But other times I will sit and I will cry with you. And we've got times, and some of them are going to be tough, but we're going to get through them. They've been tough before. It's just the way it's going to be. And it's all right. And be comfortable with being uncomfortable. Please be comfortable with being uncomfortable, because if you are, you're in the exact right place. This is how we grow. Again, my boss, a recent boss said to me, you know, when I was going through some tough times, going from being a desk jockey, a policy wonk, to being a deputy superintendent, it physically hurts sometimes. People suck. You know, I mean, you know, when you're sitting down with a director's order or something like that, it doesn't hurt your feelings. It just sits there. But when you're working with 50, 100 different personalities, it's like, dang. And so it physically hurt for quite a while. And so my boss said to me, it's growing pains, physical growing pains. You're growing. And I'm like, oh. All right, well, I can work with that. It's sort of like when you work out and it hurts so good, right? And so I went from being a big old crybaby to saying, that hurts so good. Oh, you made me cry, thank you. Because you're making me the person that I am. And so you grow, it hurts, it sucks. You put a wig on that, you be blessed. You play with your Slinky, which, by the way, is the toy of Pennsylvania, I found out. It's the Pennsylvania state toy. So for you from Pennsylvania, you know, it's just a symbol of resiliency, and you guys, you kind of need it. So anyway, that's all I have to say. It wasn't a whole lot. It wasn't super complicated, and my Slinky didn't get kinked up, so I'm going to put one in the win column. And I really want to thank you all for your kind attention and for being here and for being there for me the other day when I was finally able to return to you as an adult learner and not, you know, as a sad, you know, hurt feelings person that I was for about an hour and 45 minutes. So it didn't take too long. So thank you very much.